All right. So this first kind of discussion here, kind of more properly, and again, I mean, I want those questions to kind of be in the back of your mind as we kind of like work through these two articles quickly today, and thinking about again, like what is one's relationship with the non-human world, with with animals, right? And in particular, thinking about if we have a duty towards animals. And so the first one that we're going to engage with here is our old friend Immanuel Kant. And interestingly, Kant gives us I would say, a fairly feelings based argument here, which is interesting given everything that we talked about with Kant a couple of weeks ago. And in your book, this is only a page and a half long, so it's not very long to read, and I encourage you to go read it. But I'm just going to highlight something of a way of considering what Kant says about animals, where this is called Duties Towards Animals by Immanuel Kant. And he's going to say, animals are concerned, we have no direct duties. Animals are not self conscious. I mean, I think a lot of us might push back on that. And are there merely, pardon me, animals are not self conscious and are there merely as a means to an end. That end is man. So Kant, again, kind of following, I would say, a traditionalist approach in one's relationship of human and non-human, is there are certainly a multiplicity of prevailing viewpoints and worldviews that place kind of human beings on the pinnacle of evolution, as the pinnacle of creation, right? And this has got religious undertones, this has cultural undertones, the fact that, a lot of people think that humans are the most important species, right? And we are at the pinnacle of, again, kind of this pyramid or tower, however you want to think of it, of evolution, this pyramid or tower of creation. And, it's our responsibility to take care of all the animals. But, if some animals die at our expansion, then so be it, right? That's our own right because we're human beings, we're really special, right? And Kant, I think, is in that kind of outlook, right? Where, again, when we think mostly about animals, often we treat those animals as a means towards an end, right? Um, when we think about kind of the consumption of animals, right? Whether that's poultry, whether that's beef, whether that's fish, whatever the case may be, isn't it the case that we are using those animals as a means towards an end? We're using those animals as a means towards our growth, our filling our stomachs. So in a way, we do exploit and use animals quite often. And I mean, you can think about it in terms of, again, kind of, and I'm sure that I have some students that are like ag science majors and kind of ag econ, and thinking about the way that we move and use cattle, the way that we move and use all sorts of stock, right? And it's interesting to consider here with Kant, where he is taking this approach that animals, right, they're merely a means towards an end. That end is man, humans, right? We can ask why do animals exist, but to ask why does man exist is a meaningless question, right? Again, because we don't really ask that question of why humans exist, because again, we think we're really special and we exist and that's all that matters, blah, blah, blah. But maybe we ask the question, well, why do animals exist? And it's for our use, okay? Now, I'm going to pause for a second because maybe this strikes some of you as interesting, because Kant also said that we shouldn't treat humans merely as means, right? That we should treat humans as ends in themselves. And this goes back to the second formulation of the categorical imperative. So, what's going on here, right? And how does Kant kind of like, I would say, kind of get out of this little bit of I would say, a little bit of a hole that he's dug? And again, he's going to reserve kind of the specialness of human beings, which a lot of ideologies promote. But then he does take a move that I think is pretty interesting. And he says here, okay, our duties towards animals are merely indirect duties towards humanity. Let me read that again. Our duty towards animals are mere indirect duties towards humanity. And what he's meaning by that, where he says animal nature has analogies to human nature, and by doing our duties to animals, we indirectly do our duty towards humanity. And so what he's saying here, kind of just to make it and sum it up more easily, is how we treat animals might very well be indicative of how we treat other human beings, right? And he goes a little bit further here in this page and a half here, and I think that there is something that's kind of, there is something that may be kind of true here, right? The idea that if you see somebody, as heinous as this is, you see somebody, beating a dog, I think that we can pretty clearly assume some things about maybe the way they treat humans. And that's kind of what Kant is saying here, that the way that one treats animals, our duties towards animals are merely indirect duties toward human beings. So if we have duties of being kind, of being thoughtful, of being, again, treating others as ends in themselves, then by that, indirectly, should extend to the animal world. Okay? So we're going to pause here, pick back up in the second one.